Good afternoon, Dark Star Force. This is Captain Ando1 speaking on behalf of the Dark Star Strategist. Now I'm going to have a brief discussion on faction rep gains and when should you go into considering dual factioning your character and when you should consider going into triple factions in your character. So looking at the factions tab, you can see where your various levels are at right now. As you can see right now, with both Federation and with Klingons, I am considered to be respected because I have more than 10 million. Whereas with Romulans, I am currently considered favored, which means I have more than 100,000. Now, if you hadn't noticed, I have all three factions are on a friendly basis to me. So at this time, other than augment space, I can fly virtually anywhere in the galaxy and expect to be completely never attacked by anything other than other players. Basically, I'll have no hunters in any of the spaces I go to, which for those who have to deal with those things when they're out hunting hostiles and things like that, I mean, anyone can attest that's a very nice feature. Now, the question is, how did I get there? Did I start with all three factions? No, I did not. That's actually something that just came around today. Up till now, I was working with Federation and Klingons at the respected level, and Romulans were basically negative 2 million, which is the maximum level of hostile they could be. And then I just made the decision yesterday that I would start going triple faction and try to be in the status where I am right now. One of the key components to that is to be aware of what's called the faction lock. The faction lock is what occurs when a player reaches a faction rep level of at least 10 million. So that means no matter how much genocide I do of Federation right now, I will never drop back below 10 million. That's what I mean by the faction lock. So right now I'm killing Federation traders very heavily because that is a big benefit for faction rep rewards. As you can see, for every one of these 39 traders, I get 1308 faction rep for the Romulans and negative 4908 rep for the Federation. But since it will never drop below that 10 million mark, I don't have any fear of doing so because it won't affect my access to the respected store of the Federation. So that's a faction lock in a nutshell. So now the next question a lot of people are probably asking, what are the benefits of going dual faction and triple faction? Now, the first and most obvious one is when you have a favorable reputation with any of these factions, is you get to avoid the hunters. Right now I'm sitting here in Terra Nova all day long killing Federation ships, and I don't have to worry about a single hunter coming out and killing me, even if I walk away from playing for 10, 15 minutes at a time. That's never going to be a concern while I'm in Federation space or any of the three spaces. So that's one of the big things. And if you are trying to mine one of the G3s that are only accessible or more accessible in faction space, you don't have to worry about throwing a miner out there and having to worry about a hunter coming in and killing it. So those are some big advantages of having multiple faction rep, and especially triple faction rep. Now, the next question people are probably asking is, should I start that way? So when you get to when you're in the lower levels, like mid-teens, and you start to work for a faction rep, should you start the triple faction? My answer to that would be a definitive no. The problem is when you're low leveled and you don't have a faction lock in place, gains to one tend to negate growth to others. In other words, when you do something, when you kill a Federation hostile, you're going to gain a lot of Romulan rep and a little bit of Klingon rep, but you're going to lose a lot of Federation rep at the same time. So if you don't have a faction lock keeping you positive, that will actually put you in a hostile state with the faction you're killing. So you can either when you're triple faction and you don't have a faction lock in place, your choices are to kill nothing or um, keep killing around trying to keep it even. But either way, you won't make any significant gains while you're trying to sustain a 3 faction rep level while you're a lower level. But once you get to that faction lock point again, you'll look back. I know that no matter how many of these Federation traders are hit, I am never going to go below that 10 million mark. So I can keep doing that, gaining all the positive Romulan rep bonuses and not have to worry about the Federation rep going low. So the time to go triple faction is definitely after you are either faction locked in one faction or in 2 factions, which is what I did with the Federation and the Klingons. So the next question, should I start when I get to the mid-teens and I'm selecting a faction, should I start with 2 factions? I'm going to claim my 10-minute chest here. My answer to that would be yes. That's probably the best time. What that does, when you have 2 different factions and you're doing daily goals, you will have faction dailies for every faction you're involved with. So when it comes to getting this daily rewards token, the loyalty tokens, you will get it much quicker. You'll be able to complete 2 quests at once. You can kill, for instance, if you're Federation and Klingon like I was, I could kill Romulans and it would count towards both quests. So once I knocked out 25 at the level where I'm currently at 39s, I would be finished with 4 different, actually 6 different quests really towards my daily goals. So you can imagine those things make a pretty big dent anyway. My loyalty badges come really early when I'm dual factioning. And that's going to be the case even when you're in your lower teens. So that's why it's definitely good to get in early for dual factioning. Now, one downside of doing that, if you do that, is you will have a delay in your access to your faction ships. In other words, while you're dual factioning, you're going to lower the rate of increase in a single faction a bit, because even the faction dailies that you do every day, they have a negative effect on the factions that are not applicable to them. In fact, it's halved. So when I finish the meth node that I'm on right now and get completed with these, I'm going to lose a little bit more Federation points and Romulan points alongside my gain in Klingon rep. So that's going to be something you'd have to compensate for. But if you're dual factioning, you can still make positive gains on both factions. It's just going to put you in a very negative place for the faction you didn't go with, which is fine. But it might again delay your access to your different tiers in your faction store. Because, for instance, the Federation at tier, once you get your up to a certain level, you'll have access to the Mayflower. When you get more access, you'll get higher reputation. You'll get access to the Antares and the Saladin. More rep, you'll have access to the Intrepid, and then you get to be the Enterprise. And beyond that, you'll go into the more advanced ships that you're probably not too worried about right now. So it will slow your growth towards that, but in the grand scheme of things, that can be a good thing. Although you might not get to 26 and already be ready to unlock the Mayflower, or as I was referring to, the Payflower. You will still be able to gain a lot more faction rep prior to that point while you're trying to build up your rep. And you can always go out and just kill traders too to help build your rep if you want to do it quicker. It all depends on you and what your how many speed ups you get, which you also get as rewards for these quests, by the way. So you will have more speed ups if you're dual factioning, and that's repair speed ups, I mean. And you will also be able to just focus that one faction you're already hostile with and keep building up that way. But it is going to slow you down a little bit, so you might not have access to some of your faction ships quite as quickly by reputation as you would if you just go single faction. Now, if you don't do it from the start, like if it's already too late and you went single faction at the outset, now you're never at a point where it's too late to start going dual faction. Dual factioning is pretty simple. Again, what you want to do here is, first of all, if you're not friendly with a faction anyway, don't go out and do their quests. Save those, because each one of the daily quests that you do, the cultured relics is an example, they have an element of faction points you will get towards the faction you're trying to work for. If you do these when that faction is already hostile to you, it'll be completely negated, because the next day when you kill a bunch of their hostiles, all that 100,000 bump will eventually just go back down to nothing, and you won't get that gain. Whereas if you save all your faction dailies until the moment you intend to go friendly with that faction, you will gain up to 100,000 per quest completed, and that can really accelerate your rate of growth. Like I said, when I started this, I started yesterday, I was at a full negative 2 million. So yesterday morning at about 6 a.m., I was negative 2 million in the Romulans. That is the maximum amount of negative you can go. Now I am up to 150,000 positive almost. And a lot of that was because I had about 1.5 million in Romulan points I gained just from doing those different quests. I had them saved up, ready to go. The other rewards you get from the quests are nice, but if you can delay doing them until you're trying to gain positive faction rep with that faction, you will be able to gain a lot of ground very quickly, and you won't regret, because you will have to spend less time doing what I'm doing right now and taking your ship out there and trader killing to try to gain the rest of the rep. So it's a lot less grindy that way. But that's usually not enough to cover the gap. So if you're already at the full 2 million, you will wind up having to do an element of trader killing. And the reason I recommend trader killing is if you look at it level per level, you look at a 39 trader here, which is what I'm doing, your Romulan gains are 1308. Whereas if I take see if I can find a 39 explorer in the area, it's a little bit less. I might have to compare a 38 to it just to see. You have about 541, so you can see the gains are quite a bit more for the traders than they are for the warships. You still get positive gains for the warships, but the traders get you the most bang for your buck, is what you typically find. See, even the 37 traders get more rep gain than the 38 explorers. So that's just something to be aware of. And you want to make sure when you do it with a crew that's very friendly to killing hostiles. Right now I have the ultimate one, which is Pike, Moreau, and Chen. When it comes to killing traders or explorers, that is the best crew. You can sit out there and pursue these all day long, and it's no big issue. And that's also probably the right time to consider going triple faction when you have Pike, Moreau, Chen at least unlocked, and you can go out here and you can kill the faction trade that'll get you the quickest rep gains with the faction you're trying to gain rep with. So it's very important to notice also that you don't gain as much for one faction that's hostile to Federation in this case as you do from the other. Romulans get the most benefit from killing Federation hostiles. So if you're looking to level Klingons actually are most hated towards Romulans. So if you go out to a Romulan space, I highly recommend Altanea if you're at the level I'm at, or something that has a lot of traders, like Lorman Gore is another one. And they work differently. You can see the Klingon rep gain is more positive than the Federation gain in the Romulan miners, and similarly the Klingon miners will gain you more Federation rep than they will Romulan rep. So if you're trying to gain rep for one faction, you want to get the most bang for the buck, and that's going to be the one that gives you the most faction rep for the one you're trying to gain. So in this case, I'm trying to gain Romulans, so I'm hitting Federation traders to try to gain that reputation as quickly as possible. So that's the next consideration there. So if you're trying to dual faction rep, I would recommend doing that any time before you get to the respected level, in fact. A lot of people may wait till after. The problem with doing that is when you're at the respected level, you're already at the point where if you want to do the 25 hostile dailies, you're killing level 39s. So if you're where I'm at, that's okay, but a level 39 regular hostile is in the traders about 1.7 million. So for a lot of people out there, that's going to seem like a lot to bite off, especially if you don't have Pike yet. Because if you're still using a normal red crew, which is Cadet Uhura, Cadet McCoy, and Chen that way, you're going to take a lot more damage from these, and it's not even a small proportion, it's a fairly large one. So that's something you want to be aware of getting into this. So if you're approaching Respected, you may want to go Duel Faction if you're not already, before you even get there. Because all you have to do is hit the faction that's not gaining you, or that's going to gain you the most bang for the buck. If you're single faction Federation, if you're just looking for efficiency and you want to know which one to go level next, I would recommend Klingon, because if you hit Romulans, it doesn't benefit Federation as much, but it benefits Klingons a lot. Whereas if instead you try to hit Klingons, it's not going to help you as much for gaining your Romulans, but it will than it would for the Federation. So it's just going to escalate your rate of Federation growth if you go that route. So if you're trying to do that, I would highly recommend hitting the faction that will get the most bang for the buck for the most part. I'm going to claim another 10-minute checks. That's a good way of time checking my videos. Now, another thing to consider here. Every day you have the daily reputation events. If you're trying to level one faction, these quests also have a negative impact on the other factions. So if I'm trying to level Romulans, I'm going to stop doing Klingon and Federation dailies, because that's going to be, and it's actually dependent on your level too. My rewards for my Romulans are a lot lower at 2,400 than, for instance, wrong one. If I did the Klingons, I'm losing 36,000. So you can see I would actually lose a lot more than I gained. So when I gain the access to join the reputation quests here in about 26 minutes, I want to avoid doing that for the Federation and the Klingons, because that's just going to slow down my growth considerably and maybe even put me back in the negative for Romulans. So for now, I'm only going to focus on the Romulan daily event. That's a personal choice because there's other rewards involved. There's also faction credits. For every one of these, you're at least to the top two tiers, you're going to get some Federation credits or Klingon credits. So you're going to have to choose to forgo those. If you're at a point where you aren't as worried about getting the credits for your faction that you're already good with, you can go ahead and just forego doing that, because it is completely optional to join that daily. The other thing you have to take consideration is your mining and your hostile killing. If you're doing the hostile killing, you're also going to lose that Federation, or you're going to lose the rep for your faction you're trying to get if you do one of the other factions quests. But that's just something you have to be offsetting by killing more reds if you decide to do that. So you always want to keep doing your dailies at least to the point where you get your loyalty chest. So I, for one, have chosen not to skimp out on any of my faction dailies. I'm currently working. In fact, I can finish off just to show you. Right now I'm at 26,000 meth. So I got here with the Romulans, I'm at 163,000. And as soon as I leave the node, I'm going to finish both faction dailies. And as you can see, that brought me down about 23,000, 24,000 rep here. And I'm just going to have to gain that up here. So that's just something you're going to have to be aware of as you go along, do daily quests. It's going to cost you a little bit of the reputation you're trying to gain. So it's especially critical when you're going for that third faction. It's still critical even when you're trying to dual faction, because it's going to slow you down to do the Federation or the quest you're already good in later. But like I mentioned, dual factioning, that's completely up to you. Best place to go dual faction is right out the gate, but you can really do any time, and I would try to make it before you get to that faction lock point because, like I mentioned earlier, the 39s are pretty beastly. If you're trying to knock out 25 of them in a day, you better have a ship that can do it. So that's just something to take in consideration there. Other than that, there really isn't a whole lot you can do. Just have patience, kill a lot of reds, keep yourself from getting too far along. Now, triple faction, it's always a good idea to consider if you let this get too much higher, whereas like my Klingons I got at 1.6 right now, you're going to wind up having to move into the veteran reds. So the veteran reds are a whole different ballpark, and I'll find some real quickly for you. So when you're in the veteran level reds, like here in Groombridge, you're looking at several millions. Actually, in this case, 39 is not so much, but you're looking usually around several million strength per unit. So that's just something to be aware of. That's actually not, those ones aren't specifically called veteran raids, but if I find some real quickly, let's see. Wolf. They called that in Wolf? No, they're not. Huh. Scouts. Strange, they're not called out there either. Okay. Not in battle. Alpha Centauri. Here we go. Here's a veteran. So they're actually quite a bit stronger, even at their level, for the level they're at. So these ones are at 1.8 million, whereas where I'm at right now, the non-veterans at the 38 level, 1.3 million on the traders. Don't seem to have any explorers, but the 37s are less than a million. So it's actually a pretty big bump when you move up to the veterans. If you get into the next level beyond respected, which is celebrated, you're going to have to start taking those veterans out. And they're usually going to be in the 40 plus range. So unless that sounds like something you're ready to do, I wouldn't recommend setting single faction up to the celebrated phase. Because while that does give you access to the ships you can get beyond 40, it also makes your quests a lot harder on a daily basis. So that's just things to consider. If you're sitting single faction, you don't want to accelerate too quickly because the daily quests become harder and it becomes much harder to get your loyalty badge. So anyway, that's really all I have to talk about today when it comes to going double, triple faction. Is it worth doing? Yes. When do you do it? In summary, dual faction as soon as possible. 3 faction after you've reached respected in your other 2 factions is the short answer to that story. And how do you do? We kind of went over that. You kill a lot of reds, saves your basic quest for going out and doing it, and then you just build it all at once so you don't have to spend a lot of time doing negative work by killing faction hostiles in the thing you're trying to gain on. You can just get it over, get it done with, bring it up to that 10 million locks. Because what I'm going to do next is once I get Romulans to that 10 million point and get them faction locked, then I can continue working on my Feds and Klingons again and bring them to the point where I can get to that celebrated status, access the Calvins and the Katingas of the world, and I can be more competitive at that level. But since I'm just a level 35, I have the tier ships I need for Federations and the Klingons. I have a little bit more freedom to play around and wait. So anyway, that's all I have for this video. Anyone have any questions, please ask them in our Discord channel or a regular chat, and I'll try to address them in maybe another video. And this is Captain Ando for Dark Star Strategist signing off.